In this next section, I want to talk about how can we measure EMFs? How can we know how much we're exposed to so that we can start figuring out how to mitigate it? In this diagram, I'm showing a picture of a tri-field multimeter that will read magnetic, electric, and radio frequencies. And so magnetic and electric frequencies are generally in the 40 hertz to about 100 kilohertz range. Remember that electromagnetic spectrum that I talked about. Whereas the radio frequency, this is our 20 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. Remember, Wi-Fi signals are 2.4 gigahertz. So we would measure the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and cell phones in the RF setting. And then we would look at the electric measurements in the electric or magnetic setting. Now, there's also what we call dirty electricity, which is very low frequencies, and we would use an EMI, or an electromagnetic interference reader. And this you plug into a plug, and it will show you how much dirty electricity is there. So what are the safe amounts? How much can we be exposed to? Well, if you go to the Canadian government website, it tells you the numbers on the left-hand side in this chart, which are actually way too high for continuous exposure. And if you look closely, the government is showing these numbers for 6 minutes of exposure. But when we're working for 8 hours a day and we're sleeping in our house and we're exposed to all of these things, it's absolutely longer than 6 minutes. So the actual realistic measurements are over here on the right. So if you did buy a tri-field, you want your magnetic reading to be less than 2 milligauss. You want the electric to be less than 100 volts per meter. And you want the RF setting to be less than 0.1 milliwatts per meter squared. And then for the dirty electricity, it should be less than 50 millivolts. Now I'm just going to show you a picture of a stereotypical house and what the measurements look like. And at the bottom of each of these pictures, I've reposted what the normal amount, what the safe level should be. So in a typical house, the magnetic reading was 0.6. Beautiful. That's great. The electric reading should be less than 100. 350. So that's higher than a safe level for long-term exposure. And keep in mind that I'm measuring at a plug, but the wires go through all throughout the house, and electricity can go into the room, several feet. The radio frequency should be less than 0.1, but what we're seeing here is 7.5. This is really, really, really high. And this, when we're looking at radio frequencies, generally it will pulse. So if you buy a tri-field and you put it up to different things, you'll see that it's pulsing, especially if you go near a router or a modem or a smart meter. And that pulsing makes it even more dangerous to our cells. And then last here in the diagram, we can see the dirty electricity should be less than 50, and it's 500. Now, as a sort of different example, here are some readings from my cabin when I first put in the solar system and I had that awful dirty electricity producing inverter. When you have a solar system, the panels collect energy that goes to a charge controller that charges 12-volt batteries. And you can use it directly, direct current. Using 12-volt batteries, you can get 12-volt lights and all kinds of things. But when you want to use 110, a normal plug, then you need an inverter to convert the DC power into AC, or alternating current. That conversion is very dirty. So if you do buy a solar system with an inverter, do your homework on which inverter to buy. You want to make sure you get one that does not produce tons of dirty electricity. In this diagram, you can see the magnetic energy was fine, electric energy, similar to the house, but then the radio frequency coming out of the plug, this was very bizarre to me, but it turns out that the inverter was making dirty electricity so close to the radio frequency range that the tri-field was picking it up in the RF setting. So that's not showing Wi-Fi and cell phone signals. it's showing the dirty electricity from the inverter. So just be cautious that there can be some overlap and it's not a totally perfect system. And then at the end here, you can see the dirty electricity should be -50 is really, really high. It pretty much always maxed out, actually, when I was using that solar system inverter. Then I got a new inverter and everything was dramatically decreased. So when you get a good inverter, it's so much better. So now all of these numbers are really great. Unfortunately, the dirty electricity is still a little bit too high. So what I do is I just turn the inverter off completely at night when I'm sleeping. Then I have 0 EMF in the cabin. But there are filters that you can buy. You can get Stetzer or green wave filters that you can plug in, and they can sort of collect some of the dirty electricity. And then there's fancy expensive ones that you can wire into your electrical panel. And they will decrease the dirty electricity by about 30 to 50%, which wouldn't have been enough for me in the cabin with a solar system, but it probably would have been good for the house. They're very expensive though. In the last section, I want to talk about what can we do about this. So now we know what our blood looks like. We know how we can see what EMF looks like, what EMF is doing to our cells, and how we can measure it and how we can determine what kind of exposure do we actually have. I also forgot to mention you should consider if you live near a 5G tower. But what can we do about it? So one thing that I wanted to talk about is some people are EMF hypersensitive and they can tell immediately. They start having immediate reactions when they're around electromagnetic fields. And so this slide is showing lots of different reasons why some people might have a hypersensitivity to EMF. There are genetic variations. SNPs are small nuclear polymorphisms, and you may have heard of the MTHFR or the methylation gene mutation, or GST, which is a mutation in our glutathione gene. And so people with those genetic variants will have less ability to deal with oxidative stress. So then they will feel the symptoms more strongly. People that have higher exposure to EMFs, like when I had that terrible solar system inverter and I was exposed to huge amounts, then I was really, really sick. When I decreased it, then I got better. It took about a month, by the way, to get better after 10 months of exposure. But it's possible. Our bodies can heal. It's amazing. The other thing is people that have allergies or chemical sensitivities tend to have a mutation called diamine oxidase, or the DAO SNP, which increases your histamine levels. You have less ability to break down histamine, so you can have mast cell reactions and the itchy histamine sensitivities. So, which in a way is okay because you get an early warning to get out of that environment or to change your environment before it has major effects on you. People that have poor ability to detoxify, so anyone with liver issues. If you have pre-existing inflammatory conditions like leaky gut, or if you have chronic inflammatory disease like cardiovascular disease, and then also exposure to other toxins that I mentioned. They can add to the oxidative stress. So what can we do about it? The most important thing, as I said already, is to decrease the exposure. I'll give you some details about how you can decrease EMF, but also consider decreasing exposure to all kinds of things. Right? We don't want to have tons of plastic in our body. We don't want to be eating food that was sprayed with pesticides. We don't want to be using nonstick frying pans and consuming forever chemicals. Or if you have mold in your house, or, eating fast food and junk food and putting all that inflammatory stuff, alcohol and, smoking and bad habits that add a toxic load to the body. We want to decrease all toxins as much as possible. And then for decreasing the effects of the EMF specifically, like I said, grounding is extremely important. We can get electrons from the earth, especially if the earth is wet, right? Because then it's going to conduct a lot better. If it's winter and you don't want to go out in the snow barefoot, then you can also buy grounding sheets or grounding mats. But I do want to caution that if you have a lot of dirty electricity in your house, you don't want to plug a grounding sheet or mat into that system. So what I do in the cabin, I have a separate grounding wire connected to a separate grounding plate that my grounding sheet is connected to by itself, so it is not in contact with the rest of the electricity in the cabin. So then when you're grounding, you're basically getting electrons through your grounding plate, through the wire, through the sheet, and then into your body while you're sleeping. Turn off Wi-Fi at night. Turn off Wi-Fi completely if you can use an Ethernet wire. If you use a Cat8 Ethernet wire, that is a shielded Ethernet wire, and that's what I use, and it has decreased the amount of EMF exposure that I have while I'm working all the time. So there's no Wi-Fi in here at all. Avoiding Bluetooth, especially earbuds. You don't want to talk on the phone with it touching your head, right? The more distance you can have from your devices, the better. If you have a smart meter, you can shield it with metal and not let those signals get through the wall and into your house. And then, yeah, with the cabin with solar systems, I just turn the inverter off completely at night. Some people might turn off the breakers in their house to their bedroom at night. Or I think just, it depends on how much dirty electricity you might have. And you'll have to measure to see what you have, what appliances are the most dirty. And, don't work sitting beside, things that are making a lot of dirty electricity. Try to make your work and your sleep environment as clean and low EMF as possible. So those are the most important things, but there are actually a bunch of supplements that can help if you're dealing with EMF symptoms or those symptoms that you didn't realize might be about EMF exposure. Then there's supplements that can help. But again, getting rid of the source is obviously the best thing that we can do. So number one is magnesium. There are different kinds of magnesium supplements that can be beneficial for different reasons. And this slide is showing some of the most common types of magnesium. The reason why magnesium is so beneficial is that it will counter those calcium channels. Magnesium can act a bit like a calcium channel blocker. And so then you're not going to have as much of the calcium moving in, causing the downstream effect of creating free radicals. We want to increase our antioxidants, so we can consume antioxidants like vitamin C and vitamin E. Also, we can take NAC or N-acylcysteine, that is a precursor to producing glutathione, if our body isn't making enough of its own glutathione. So we can take NAC or we can take actual glutathione. Liposomal is best because you're going to absorb more. And then coenzyme Q or ubiquinol would be a good antioxidant that would help support the mitochondria. We also want to support the nitric oxide pathway, since EMFs can influence that, and we can end up diverting it and producing peroxynitrite. And we don't want that. We need nitric oxide to help regulate our blood vessel dilation and constriction. And so if somebody has high blood pressure because there's not enough nitric oxide to relax the blood vessels, then a really good supplement is arginine. Arginine can help relax the blood vessels, and same with L-citrulline. And then also, some people are talking about hydrogen water, and it can help to neutralize the peroxynitrite free radicals. We want to strengthen our blood-brain barrier. So just like we want to heal our leaky gut, we want to heal the blood-brain barrier. And the best way to do that is with omega-3 fatty acids and with phosphatidylserine or phosphatidylcholine. Those are phospholipid fats that make up our cell membranes that will heal the blood-brain barrier. They will heal all cell membranes. So we want to make sure that we're not having a leaky blood-brain barrier. Also, astaxanthin, which is that red molecule that you see in like shrimp and crab and, marine organisms that have that red color. That is a really great molecule for helping to heal the nervous tissues. We want to improve our mitochondrial health. So PPQ is a molecule that helps to support biogenesis of mitochondria. So it helps the mitochondria to be able to replicate themselves, which we want to do. If we have damaged mitochondria, we need to be able to replace them with healthy mitochondria. It also will decrease oxidative stress. And then we have L-carnitine and ALA, or alpha lipoic acid. Both of these are very, very great antioxidants that help to support mitochondria. And then lastly, mind-body practices, because EMFs and all kinds of toxins can affect our nervous system and increase our stress response. So if you have a lot of anxiety, or if you have like a startle reflex that seems over the top, or if it takes a long time to calm down from a stress, then you want to help your body to get into that relaxed parasympathetic mode. And, you want to try to incorporate things like moderate exercise, going for walks, deep breathing, meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, singing, talking to a friend, anything that is going to help make you feel calm. A lot of clients that I see, stress response is, it's really huge. So anything that we can do to help support our body through stress reactions is going to help with all of this other stuff. And in conclusion, I want to say that our body has an amazing ability to heal itself. If we reduce the things that are damaging us, and we put in good, healthy, whole plants and animals, and support our normal detoxification mechanisms and our normal ability to repair DNA and grow new cells and, repair any kind of damage, then we can recover from all kinds of things.